Let's wait for just a moment, but go and get some snacks and also the slips for voting.
Pa, 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 pa. Tämä on mikkitesti.
Welcome to the Representative Council meeting. 8/2022. It's Thursday, 29th of September 2022. 5:23 p.m. opening the meeting. Moving to item 2, regarding members and deputy members of council who are unavailable, disqualified, ineligible, resigned, and present. So we will see who are present. Annika will perform the roll call. Please let us know when you're present. Hello everyone. I'll be calling out your names. And please respond when you hear your name.
Okay. Plinikka Mikael.
Yes, I will be testing if voice is any better now. Koponen Iina.
Haapanen Jesse.
Haapanen Jesse.
Kainulainen Kiti.
Kainulainen Kiti.
Ailinpieti Henri. Niemi Veiksin.
Niemi.
Räsänen Rasmus.
Rasmus.
Nissinen Paavo.
Paavo Nissinen.
Saari Jatta.
Jatta Saari.
Takanen Tuomas.
Tuomas Takanen.
Toni. Haavanlammi Joose. Luoma Kasper.
Testing. Is the voice still breaking up? Saikku Matias.
Kanniainen Teemu.
Teemu. And testing some more.
Hyytinen Sanni. Stimpert Veronika. Järvinen Oskari. Regelin Antti. Robin Silva. Matson Fanni. Mikkonen Jonna. Laakso Roosa. Aaltio Juhana. Välisalmi Heidi. Ja Pyhälammi Allu. Ihalainen Erkko. Heikkinen Pinja. Filman Emil. Huttunen Emil. Keskinisula Elias. Holmström Astrid. Meitä on 37 läsnä ja kun tänne tulee ihmisiä myöhässä.
We have 37 people present, and if people arrive late, please remind the latecomers to tell me when they arrive so we can get them included into the minutes. We have 37 members of the Representative Council present. Let's give right of residence and speech to all staff members, OBS and interpreters. The financial director, the operational director, and the committees have right of attendance as well. Do we have any other members or individuals who would like to receive right of attendance? No, so closing item 2, moving on to item 3, lawfulness and quorum of the meeting. According to the regulations, we have quorum when we have 35 members of the Representative Council and a chairperson or vice chair present. The invitation to the meeting must be presented at the official bulletin board 7 days prior to the meeting. A member must receive the invitation 7 days prior via email. In 3 languages, Finnish, English, and Swedish. All of these requirements are met, so I declare we have quorum. Closing item 3, moving on to item 4, election of 2 individuals approving the minutes and 2 vote counters. Choosing 2 individuals for each task and their seconds. So a total of 4 individuals, since the seconds will, the chosen members will act as seconds for each other. Ilman, anybody else? Two vote counters as well. Huttunen. One more. Fielman proposed somebody, but he does not have a microphone. So can you state your full name? The full name. Nice initiative. Closing items, the discussions, choosing as minutes. Checkers these 2 and vote counters the mentioned 4 individuals. Closing item 4, moving on to item 5, confirming the agenda. You have received the meeting agenda in addition to the meeting invitation. Are there any additions to it? Approving the agenda as is. No proposals for change have been submitted. Closing item 5, moving to item 6, announcements. Are there any announcements? I might have some announcements myself. I have represented the student union here at the Otakaari Cornerstone setting today. The chairperson of the board could not make it and asked to send their condolences. Fielman, you may send the microphones to the crowd so we can actually get these. I would like to announce that tomorrow we have the Lakin laskiaiset setting of the hat. We'll do the hat setting tomorrow. Thank you, Emil. Any other announcements? Closing item 6, moving on to item 7. Latest news from the central office with Kuraniemi presenting. Actually, Haltunen will be presenting, differentiating from the agenda.
Yes, kiitos.
Thank you. And get the presentation slides up and running. Let's go straight to the point. Start off something not very nice. We've had in weeks 37 and 38. We've had some thefts in Otaniemi, break-ins and stealing, especially in the Teekkarikylä region. And AYYE has taken some measures and expanded the security at the Teekkarikylä area, garnered information and informed the members, volunteers and all personnel. And of course we've looked in on maybe changing the codes at the doors, and of course we have informed the police of any cases that we have encountered. Questions now or after the presentation? Yes, let's take them now. Thank you. You mentioned expanding security in the curricula. Is it so that it's all of the Teekkari village or these AYY houses? The entirety of
AYYn kiinteistöjä tällä hetkellä vartioidaan Teekkarikylän alueella. Miku.
I'm going to ask in English to make this faster. I just wonder if there should be any guidance maybe for people not to put their door codes when they're making vault orders, because if they do change, you don't know if they're being shared around somehow.
That's definitely one good point. It would be wise not to share the door codes with our vault or food delivery people, but that's probably something that AYYE is not able to enforce, but definitely something that we could recommend.
Kiitos.
Moving on. About community, fall events started to roll in nicely and are ongoing. We have the Lakinlaskiaiset, the large Teekkari celebration. Mental health first aid trainings are underway and in full swing. In addition, the cap laying work group recruitment is undergoing. The museum committee has been fulfilled and the final volunteer recruitment is being planned. In addition, in the community sector, we have focused on thinking of a plan of action to prevent these thefts and stealing. What we can do with event managers and members of AYYE at our volunteer events could be as safe as possible. About housing, SMT renovations planning is underway. The OK18 facelift is also underway in full swing. The OK20 window renovation is ongoing and going on. And we have in houses, we don't really have a lot of happening in only 2 weeks. So here we have communications and services, which have been combined, because on the services side, we have the project is being developed. We have the consultancy offer has been accepted. In communications, the visual style guide has been updated. The design notebook design contest is ongoing until the 5th of October, 3 p.m. News from the central office has been sent after the last meeting to the more general public. We also communicated about original sound, thefts and break-ins, excuse me, and also. So about advocacy, the board and staff have represented in the opening seminar in Turku on the 15th and 16th of September. We also heard about criminalizations of destruction of nature on inflation by Olli Rehn, and of course networking was undertaken. AYYE still delegates have been presented for the first time. Shout out to Rege and Sampo. The educational policy sector has been taking an EAIE, European Association of International Education Conference, and week 37, and on the following week, the European Society for Engineering Education, CEFI, conference. On administration and IT, lots of things are happening. The information relinquishing agreement has been updated and will be signed soon. Due to the update, AYYE will have more information out from CISU. This will make it more smoother for member services and Frank. And AYYE can in the future give some information to its member associations, especially it helps e.g. guild membership fees. The advocacy and communications manager recruitment is ongoing. Also, AYY's offices are preparing an IT policy, which is idea is to clarify our IT activities and the responsibilities and processes and to guide our digital services development. You should have a survey which you should fulfill by no later than the 16th of October. Board has been very active in addition to everything else. The starting day on the 13th, student seminar 15th and 16th, and the University and Ministry of Education checkup on the 20th of September. Next up, we had the Sadankorjuu Sitsi party, academic dinner party on the 24th. And yesterday, on Wednesday, we had the Acre breakfast on the 28th. Nice that the board can also do these kind of light-hearted things now and again. Listed here are meeting things. I'll just go through them very quickly. So, projects, IT policy, SYL material, Otakari project on getting degree rents, Dekari songbooks, the design notebook. Also had the process for single rental spaces, made it a bit clearer, and choosing AYY's representatives for OLL's General Assembly. That pretty much concludes all of the, and then we have a picture of Chairperson Otto, who couldn't regrettably be here today. Any questions? Thank you. Opening discussions, and Fielman has a question. If you have any other questions, you may submit them. What price will the new songbook have? At this stage, I would like to lie, but I'll just give the mic to Ida, who might know. Lots of noise without a microphone, which the interpreter cannot hear.
Yes, nyt kuuluu toi.
Yes, now you can hear me. Wonderful.
Lyhyt vastaus, en tiedä.
In short, I don't know.
Siihen, että kustannukset
In
tolle 3000
longer term, I'd say the costs for 3,000 books are about 69,900 euros. 6,900, not 69,000. About 7K. So that gives you an estimate. It has been a bit pricier to buy. Will AYYE will be selling it based on its cost, or will we ask more money? So it would be maybe €5 a book would be very, very nice.
No, kirjaan on tosiaan haettu
The book,
esimerkiksi
we have a TTR funding,
sitä tullaan myymään sellaisella
and we
hinnalla,
will sell it at a price that we can get the cost. We are not making profits, which will dictate the price. Thank you. Any other requests for the floor?
Pollari. And also testing if the microphones are working better. But yes, I don't have any kind of a question, but rather this is a big help in maintaining the registers. and in planning. It seems that there are no other comments or questions, so the Representative Council decided to record the news from the central office. Item 7. Testing, testing. Can you hear me any better now?
I apologize for the difficulties with the simultaneous translating. We have discussed today at the office that we will slowly move on so that in future meetings the translators will be live here, so we don't have the problems with the connection.
Niin, pätkiikö siis edelleen? Mä en tiedä mikä tässä on, kun me kuitenkin kuullaan toisemme ihan hyvin. Yes, moving to item 8, Otakaari Apartments. I will not read through the text. It seems that you can hear me now. Today we'll go through the Otakaari apartment project. So here's today's agenda on the topic. So, the renegotiations authorized by the board. So our commitment to the costs. We'll have a preliminary vote. Or an indicative vote. For example, on the size of the apartments and the common facilities. Then we have an actual discussion on the decision, the indicative votes after that. And what they decide on is the commitment, give the authorization to the board to negotiate and come to an agreement. Not decide on the outward appearance of the apartments. Some problems with the microphone. So, project of about 4 buildings. So, Acre Senate, which is the state. Depending on future plans. 700 to 850 new apartments. There's some public shelters And we also use them as communal spaces. These are some visualizations of what kind of buildings we will build. So in the left-hand corner, the biggest building, building number 1. Buildings 2 and 3 are about the same size. And from the earliest plans, what has changed is the building number 4. We had to expand this so-called corridor for flying squirrels. These are the major changes to the previous visualizations. So this is a visualization of what it will look like from looking towards Ossinlampi. Se Autokari 18. And the corner of building 2. And here on TF side, building number 4. Autokari is about to go through a street renovation. So this is about, you can see what size building we are talking about. This is a visualization of our current zoning plans. Since there have been 2 other parties to this, it has been quite eventful, the negotiations. Because when there are more parties, it becomes more complicated. We also sent this to you in the materials beforehand. Here we have details about the number of floors, for example. Move on to the next one. These are some preliminary estimates. So kind of rough estimates on the numbers. I think the number of square meters will stay roughly the same, but the number of apartments depends on the decisions you make according to the building. I think the estimate is about 2.83 million euros. So we're in the millions. But because the costs are building specific, they will be realized step by step.
No ihan viimeisimpiä muutoksia, mutta nämä pitäisi kyllä olla.
So there has been some changes. Let's go through that a bit later.
So about the numbers in the last slide, can you go back just a little bit? I think there was a typo in the first one, rakennus 1, with the 10 missing, or am I incorrect?
Joo, on. Joo.
Okay, that's good to know.
Puuttuu oikeassa. Pahoittelut siitä.
Yes, you're correct. And more about this slide, the square meters per floor kind of shows the difference between these. difference in size between the buildings. So you can see that building 1 is the biggest and building 4 is the smallest. Yes, let's have the questions at the end of the presentation, please. And about the schedule, try to dig through the materials that we have about the project over the last 10 years. Yesterday I heard that the university considered this already in 2012, actually. So the first kind of materials that I could find or information is in 2015 when the zoning application was submitted. I think it was then handled by the financial committee. Then it was put in the limbo. I couldn't find any material for the next 2 years. And then suddenly, 2018 to 2019, it popped up back again. These different reports and investigations. The most important one is the report on the flying squirrel population. And the general plan for the street really defines what the environment around the building looks like. It will change a lot. There will be better cycleways, etc. But they're not actually related to this project per se. Then was some reports on the cultural history, related to cultural history of the area, and all the comment round for the zoning. And the Representing Council decided a couple of years ago that the grant 350,000 euros for campus development. We have used some of the money for this project. And in 2021, we had a major victory when for Otakaari 1 they're supposed to have a parking hall, but now we have managed to prevent this project from happening. And this year it has moved forward at a rapid pace. The Espoo City Council approved of it in August. And then our financial committee activated in this regard and made a proposal to the Representing Council. So the plan is to decide on the authorization for the preliminary meetings, preliminary agreement, and moving on to the design phase. And because it is a lengthy project, a lot of uncertainties related to it, I have visualized with these very informative icons with what the timetable could be like in an ideal situation. So if you decide to give your blessing to the project, then next year we will do the planning, the design, and then in 2024 we will have to use our cash to use our money to buy the plots, and then we will start the construction. And the construction phase will last for about 2 years. And this will be going on until 2030, when everything should be ready. But this is just a very preliminary schedule and in an ideal situation. So it might not be completely ready by 2030. And then about these shelters, collective shelters, because in Serviniemi, the apartments have collective shelters that are demanded in the legislation, owned by the real estate company. So the problem is the rent related to these collective shelters. So because our tenants pay for the costs for incurred by the building, then it's a bit of a financial problem for us because the shelters are not included in the rent of the tenants. And now we decided to solve this problem by building new collective shelters to these Otakaari buildings. And these are mandated by law that there has to be a certain amount of these shelters. And what's positive here is that, well, many of you have walked past, at least it's a very steep hill. So when you build a house, there is kind of a natural basement floor there. And the basement floor cannot be used as apartments, but it's very good for as collective shelters. And it can also be used for other purposes like storage rooms or as collective spaces. For example, as club spaces for associations, etc. Actually, let's move forward. We have also discussed today about the communal banquet space, a festive space. I believe that we will be quite unanimous that we need more festive spaces in Otaniemi. So one option would be to build it in Otakaari, but unfortunately, because it's not an apartment, even though some people do live in Smökki, in effect, but it's not officially an apartment, so it cannot be funded through ARA funding. But it's still worth investigating. Let's look at in the indicative votes. But for the festive space, the office has estimated that the best building for that would be building 1, which is the biggest. And the reason why we propose this is that it's cheaper to build it in Otakaari than, for example, in the student center. Partly because of these synergy benefits of being in a same building with an ARA-funded building. Then let's move on. And about recent events. This year a lot has happened. During the spring and the summer, the Aalto University has paid in June about 5 million euros to the Espoo city in the form of land use fees. This enabled the issue to be taken to the city council. And the city council approved of the new zoning in August. And now it looks like that it will be legal, in legal effect 1 month after its approval. Here we can see the entire zoned area. And what's noteworthy is that in this meeting, there's agreed on the revoking of the so-called Otaniemi agreement, which has complicated and slowed down many building projects in this area. So that's a positive thing as well. And moving on, and because these land use fees, it's quite a peculiar concept. So I'll open it up a bit. So the landowner has the obligation to participate in the costs of societal construction if it provides significant benefits to the owner. And so, yes, the value of the plots has increased. And so when they will sell the plots to us, hopefully, they will get more profits from it than if we would buy a park area, for example, from us. That's why they're obliged to pay for these fees. These are always case-specific agreements. And why are we deciding on this now?
Tämä on talousjohtokunnan esitys alun perin.
There was a proposal made by the Financial Committee originally, and according to our constitution, significant financial decisions, such as these planning costs, because they will cost millions, these have to go through the Financial Committee or the Financial Board and the Representing Council. Here we can see the meetings where the Finance Board has discussed the matter and the board also approved of the proposal made by the Finance Board. So some financial perspectives. The intention is to fund or finance these apartments mainly with ARA funding. That is the instance that gives subsidies to such projects. For us, it's the investment subsidy for special groups. So this means that the government through ARA pays 15% of the investment costs. And another way that ARA supports these projects is through the subsidized loans. Because we had to take out the debt to pay for it, so ARA compensates for a certain portion for it. We are not yet deciding on whether we will build the plots or buy the plots or build the buildings, but we will commit ourselves to the planning costs, which total about 2.8 million euros. So that's why it's a major financial decision. Related to the parcelation of the plots, etc. So the total will be around 3 or 3.5 million. And what's noteworthy about the costs is that they are realized step by step. So when you start building the buildings, the planning will also move on step by step. So you will not get an invoice for 2.8 million euros on your desk by the end of the year. That is not the case here. And from this 2.8 million euros, what are ARA's investment costs? So 15%. As was the subsidized loan. And as I mentioned, we will not decide on the building or the purchase of plots. We will bring those decisions to you separately for each building for you to decide. And the final costs of the plots will be determined according to ARA's maximum prices. And why are we purchasing the plots instead of renting them? Well, the landowners they're not willing to rent them out. They want to sell them. So the preliminary agreements, the idea is to agree on the schedules with the landowners and about the conditions, about the parcels, which are certain part of the plot, a certain area that can be used to form a plot. But yes, when we talk about parcel purchases, we talk about plot purchases in essence. Now we have had a negotiation with ACRE and Senaatti, so with the university and with the state. The negotiations are well underway with ACRE, but not haven't progressed as much with Senaatti. The university has wanted to progress the issue quickly because they have already paid for these land use fees.
varsinaisesti näiden määräalakauppojen ja
And
niiden aikatauluista niin me ollaan päättänyt myös
in addition to these, we have decided on a retention fee or a
sopimuksessa, missä
fee in a preliminary contract where in practically we will be compensating the university for their
maankäyttömaksua ja saadaan sitä kautta
costs, and we will thus lengthen the time of the sale to be more favorable to us. So us as AYY, it's not realistic for us to take these goals, get them all at once, but we will do them if they want the investment that they have placed in returned quickly as possible. So moving on, any questions? Actually, well, I would actually quickly present the up and coming votes that we'll be voting if you have you'll decide to give us the right to move forward with this. Moving forward. So in the planning stage, it is quite sensible at the early stage to decide on the issue what we actually want from this project, because making changes afterwards is pretty expensive. So it's good to know when we begin on what we want. One thing that we have thought, or I personally have thought, is this party space. Otaniemi needs a large party venue. About the size of Smökki, maybe even bigger. Would have a good kitchen. Would have a event technique and good ventilation, as opposed to Smökki, would be nice. Acoustics, because of course we have the kind of noise prevention that we could make noise and not cost the sleep of nearby housing tenement residents. And it would need to be easy to clean. And moving on. And the second topic would be, what kind of houses would we want? What kind of housings would we prioritize? We have these basic studio units. Of course, we will have different kinds of apartments other than just studios. If you just make these little oblong boxes, it won't make a nice house. So different kinds of flats, but most of which would be one of these two options. The differences between these two would be that the smaller one, the upper one, actually you'll get more of them because you have a fixed amount of square meters in a building. But they would be kind of a more tube-like. You kind of make kind of these deep buildings. So kind of a tube-like. At this 25 square meters, the bottom one would be a bit more spacious, also accessible. You can see these circles, the 1300 millimeters, 1.3 meters, so you could actually have a wheelchair there. The larger would have a washing machine included, or a spot for a washing machine. Maybe if you could turn your bed, you could place it somewhere else than where it's in the picture. If I could personally bring my kind of a template, I would be a fan of the below choice. Just that when we are building these, the houses will be on the street corner for the next 50 years, maybe even longer. Because the longer a building is being used, the more sustainable the building is. Based on this, I would say that we could actually build houses where we will actually want to live ourselves. And 2040s and 50s when these buildings will be completed, the argument will definitely be that we have long queues. We know this, but these houses will not be ready this year, next year. They won't be ready this decade. They won't be a solution to the problem at hand. They might be a part of the solution in the future. And I would wish that we won't build houses with like plastic carpeting. People don't like that. We get lots of complaints about plastic carpeting, etc. So of course, a smaller flat is cheaper for the person living in it. A larger flat will be more expensive. Kela will not even cut the entire rent for you. So your portion as a tenant will increase. But I personally would suggest that we would build 50-50 so that we'd get the best of both worlds. And through this, we could have our housing stock would stay diverse, which has its value. And after this propaganda speech, maybe have a 15 minutes or how much break? So yes, you're ready now. Okay. So if I may reiterate, after the break, the point is to talk about committing to the preliminary agreement and to commit to the design stage and decide on that. Yes, let's do so that let's take the questions before the break. And like Sampo said, that Takiva has sent a strong message that we have a break, but let's have the question, then a break, then continue with the discussion afterwards. So, questions, the floor is yours.
Kiitos herra puheenjohtaja Fiima Votti.
About the presentation, you can see that we are removing parking spots. I think that the street parking will be continuing, but how we'll remove parking spots, this project? Clearly, it will affect Ossinparkki, adjacent to Otakaari 18. I think that we have a few dozen parking spots. Not, I don't have the exact numbers, but I'd say it's about 50. Do we have no plans to kind of make up with these lost parking spots as of yet? Not to my knowledge. This is kind of a value question. Are we building houses or are we building parking spots? Okay, we've also talked about party venues, and cellar spaces, association spaces, but have we thought about tenant communal spaces? I think there is a regulation that requires us to build some free community spots. We have looked at this as well, but practically we are creating association spaces and tenant spaces. The differences are quite small. So the decisions we can make when the building is ready, what do we want, what the user group to be, something we can think of then. Thank you. We have the next question. I can't remember your name as of yet. So a quick question. I think I've forgotten something. When we talk about the party venue, we talked about would it be more cost effective to build it in the houses than at the student center? Would this mean that if we would start to do this, that we would not have a party venue at the student center? But No, but we don't really have a large party venue coming there nevertheless. I think that Smökki, when I checked, 300 square meters or so. So we don't have that kind of a facility. We can't even design one at the student center. So me as an old event organizer, I would see that this is the main thing that people want. Wonderful. Räsänen from Kylterirengas, we have a question about the party venue. Is that do we just build it in the bigger house, or would it be possible to build it into the smaller house to mitigate the sound problems caused by noise? This is kind of well, at this stage we are looking at your will. That does the student union to begin with. We are using our own money to create this kind of opportunity. In the planning stage, of course, we look at where it's the most sensible to create. If it's the first #1 house, if it proves a complete disaster, shit idea, we won't do it. But we are looking for a mandate to explore and maybe to use an acoustics designer to think of what we can decide. Wonderful. Blinikka followed by Aalto.
Joo, moi, Mikael Blinikka.
Yes, hello, Mikael Blinikka, Kylterirengas.
Sanoit, että hyvä vaihtoehto.
You said that a good option would be that we have 50% small buildings and 50% large ones. I would ask that, have you made some sort of research on what people
are actually interested in? I know it's hard to foresee what people might want in 2030 because we can't see the state of the housing market then, but that sounds like just a made-up number from the air, like, well, not sure if this is good or that, let's just go 50-50. So I wanted to ask if there's any indication from like the queuing in AYYE currently, and if there is signs that people are less interested or more interested in small apartments or big apartments. Ja voit vastaa suomeksi, tämä translation toimii nytten. Kiitos.
Okay, at this stage, I'd like to weigh in that I'm a fan of these bigger apartments, partly because I think that that's somewhere where I'd want to live. And that's kind of the baseline I start with to think about what kind of housing. But why I'm proposing the 50-50 model would be that, in a sense, we have a need for two types of apartments. We have small and cheap ones, especially with international students. They just want a small, cheap place to live. The kind of hot stuff. These kind of apartments. But then we also have this 25 square meters, maybe even larger ones. There's also large hankering to get those kinds of apartments as well. The problem, of course, is that all of our studio queues are, I think, 400 days on average, a waiting period. Terribly long. So anything that we build will be taken up by somebody, definitely. I'll be frank, I don't have any exact numbers. We have not made a broad survey on the subject. It's a partially why this is making this questionnaire to you to ask for your mandate to maybe progress this. You could also make a tenant survey, but I don't have exact numbers. It's an excellent question. Thank you. This is also a good question, but let's try and focus on the preliminary agreement as of yet and the costs of the design phase. So we're going to have the discussion on our guidelines later. Next question, Aalto.
Aaltio, vihreämpi Aalto. Iso kysymys tässä on se,
A big question here is that how much will we gain these student housing? Does AYYE have plans for larger projects for student housing, that we can actually get more flats, and how much opportunities do we have in terms of facilities or space? For space, I can say that you can get more space by purchasing land. That is a very simple solution. You solve it with money. But the problems are on the end of kind of city official deciding parties. How you kind of zoned student housing. Currently we have Miestentie, which is being built, which kind of in the planning phase being built. We'll have the Hoas and Espoo city co-op building that we could build. Kind of a new house. In total, you could focus that Miestentie and Otakaari, these are about 1,000 flats in Otaniemi. And the housing policy of the Finnish government states that by 2030 we should have 10,000 new. Just of Otaniemi would gain 10% of this. We of course get to the resources point of view. And if we want kind of more housing, if the representative council states that we want more housing, the resources question is something that we can solve. These financial risks are, well, they're there. Monica has her own opinions of these risks, of course. I think we have a debt of 100 million. And after these, about 300 million. So the debt risk will increase. But it has to do with that will we get tenants? Because we pay for this with our own money. So that as long as we have tenants and we have the sustainable level of rent, the rent or the loans can be handled. So we can tackle the risks with that. Did this answer the question at all? Yes, thank you. Regelen Filmon. Regeli, greener Aalto, vihreämpi Aalto. We are committing to plot purchases. I would ask that what is the reasoning that these preliminary agreements have not been visible yet? Have I just missed them? Thank you. Well, we have negotiated these contracts. And it's kind of operative work. So, well, what is part of the kind of a mandate of the board creating these contracts. So we are getting the mandate to negotiate and do the work that is based on the regulations our task. It's also, well, it's kind of micromanaging on part of the representative council. If you don't, yes, well, Fielman has an opinion, of course, but I would say this is the board's work. It's what we do. You give us the framework and we work within the framework. Thank you. Here we had the most central points about what will be decided in the contract. No other requests or... Yes, no other requests. If you don't have anything to fulfill or ask, let's take the break now. Back a bit over 10 minutes at 6:40. We'll return. And you may look at this proposal in your groups, but I ask that if you have requests for other groups, keep them in the hall. We will take a short break now, a recess. We'll come back, have the preliminary discussion proper about this planning stage and committing to these planning stages, and then we'll make the decision, after which we will decide if we decide to move to the planning stage, then we'll have the detailed discussion of that and the direction guiding votes. Is this clear to everybody in the meeting? Wonderful. So 12-minute break, continuing at 6:40.
Testing, if it's still working correctly, since we're now back.
Hienoa, tervetuloa takaisin.
Yes, great, welcome back.
Kysyisin, että
Now,
saapunut tai poistunut täältä ilmoituksesta.
has anyone arrived or left without letting us know?
Muita tai kukaan poistunut. Hienoa. Sitten
Okay, great.
Otokaarin asuntojen käsittelyllä.
Moving on to this item about Otokari apartments. And as I mentioned, we'll continue with the discussion about the preliminary agreements for purchasing the plots and moving into the planning phase. After that, we will decide according to the agenda. And after that, we will have the indicative votes. Opening discussion, you may request the floor. Fielman.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja Filma Volte. Mun näkemyksen mukaan AY:n tulee näihin
The way I see it,
tarjota asukkaille vapaassa käytössä olevia kerhotiloja, vähän niin kuin
AYYE should offer freely usable club spaces in these buildings, which will support the sense of communality of students and tenants and makes it possible to live more comfortably in Otaniemi. So it shouldn't be just for associations, but also free to use spaces for tenants as well. For the size of the apartments, I think we need to choose a 21 and 21.5 square meters. Because we really can't say to a part of the tenants that, sorry, we wanted to have bigger apartments for some tenants. There are spacious apartments also in Otaniemi. So if these are not big enough for some, there are bigger apartments elsewhere in Otaniemi. So I think definitely we should choose this 21.5 square meters. So we can have more apartments. Because this additional space will not bring any significant benefits. It will mostly just add to the corridor space. Yes, I'll specify. Let's now talk only about the commitment to the preliminary agreement. I will give you a later chance to discuss, for example, the square meters, the size of the apartments as the festive space. Yes, I will give you the right to talk about them later on, but now we will talk about the moving to the planning phase and to the preliminary agreements and their authorization. Does the representing council know what you are deciding on today? Please raise your hand if you if you don't know what we are actually deciding on today. Well, it seems awfully quiet. Well, yes, Filman.
Kiitos, herra puheenjohtaja. Tässä Regelin tuossa aikaisemmin nosti esille tämän.
Regelin pointed out previously that the representing council hasn't seen the drafts for the agreement, so I'd like for the board to deliver us the agreements before signing them, so we can actually read through them before that. So if there's something peculiar in them, we can withhold our decision to sign them. So it would be great if we could see them at some point. Thank you. Yes, we have marked this down, this comment. That's generally about negotiations, contract negotiations. Often the negotiations are confidential. until they have been signed. And the agreements may kind of change a bit. And if you have probably heard or remember, the agreement negotiations regarding the student center, well, we had negotiations with 4 different parties. So there are some upsides to giving the mandate to negotiate an agreement instead of having to bring every document to the representing council. Because the other party here, which is the university, the state and the city of Espoo, there are also people there who may be frustrated when our decision-making structure is very burdensome at times, which may also worsen our position in the negotiations. Filman, a quick counter argument. This is not what I asked, but mostly that before signing them, that there will be some time for the representing council to go through the agreement when you have already agreed on the agreement, what it will look like. So I have not asked to have any additional meetings or anything like that, but rather that representing council has the chance to see what the agreement looks like. If there are some kind of problems, then we can withhold our decision. Thank you. Now there are no other requests for floor, so I will close discussion on this topic. And I don't think we have any proposal for change either. So we can move on to making the decision. So the motion is that the representing council decided to transition to the planning phase of the Otakari housing project and authorize the board to negotiate the contracts in the planning phase that are in the interests of AYYE. The RepCo decided to commit to the purchase of Otakari land by means of preliminary agreements with each landowner and decided to authorize the board to negotiate and sign the necessary preliminary agreements. It has decided that the final decisions on land acquisitions, construction projects and each project financing will be brought to the representing council in stages. Deposits related to the conclusion of preliminary agreements prior to transactions are financed on a temporary basis by income from investment assets and or property transactions. Deposits are invested after they are fully returned to the student union when either the transaction is concluded or cancelled. This has been decided. Now we have some indicative votes about the size of the apartments and about the festive or banquet space. Yes. My suggestion is that first we could have some discussion about the festive space and then about the size of the apartment. Yes, opening discussion. So about the banquet space. Vilma? I think the banquet space is a great idea. We should do it. But now they should be easily accessible and nice to use for everyone and have good acoustics. But yes, I very much want this to be done. Thank you. Any other requests for floor for the banquet space, or are you ready for the indicative vote related to it? Later on, we will have a proposal with the actual price tag, that how much it will cost the banquet space, because we don't know it yet. So yes. Vote 1. Apologies for the Swedish translation. It's done by me, so. So will AYYE plan and find out the price and possibilities of implementing a large event space at Otakaari? So blue is yes. AYYE should do it. No is red. AYYE should not use their resources to plan and find out the price and possibilities of implementing large event space, and the white means empty. Any questions about these options? Is it clear to everyone what we're voting on? It seems crystal clear. Okay. We'll ask you to raise up your voting slips in a moment. And if the result is clear, then I'll just say what the result is. But if needed, I will ask the vote counters to come forward. So choose your option. Raise all slips now. I'll take a good photo of this to put on social media. Only blue votes, blue papers. Sampo never do that again. Great. You can lower the papers. Nice to see that we can agree on something so unanimously. Then you can request the floor related to the size of the apartments. Apologies, I can't remember your names. Rasanen first. Rasanen from Kylterirengas. Try to comment. Tuon Filma said that it's of no use if it's a bigger apartment. Well, it can fit better different kind of furniture, which is mentioned in our policy paper. And if you think about the pandemic, it means then if we are not yet ready of pandemic, the 4 square meters are a lot if it's your own life, if you can only live in your apartment. Luka from Kokoomus, I think this smaller apartment would be significantly better because it would be a significant problem if we have a very long housing queues. I think very problematic that we would say to some people that we don't have apartments for you because we wanted to give bigger apartments to someone else, as there are bigger apartments already available in Otaniemi if people are willing to pay for them. And especially, for example, in Tapiola, there are bigger apartments on the private market. I don't see it's our task to offer anyone a pricey big apartment, but rather afford as many affordable apartments as possible. Thank you.
Aalto, vihreämpi Aalto. Isommassa kämpässä on etuna se,
in the bigger apartments,
henkistä terveyttä ja
it also benefits the mental health of students and also gives better options for social events, as meaning to invite friends over. Thank you. Regelin.
Toisin tässä tämmöistä kompromissin ääntä. Itse olin ensin...
How about a compromise? I first were for the smaller apartments, but the third option would be that we could have both. It would mean that we would have both accessible apartments and also a bit smaller apartments. So if you have a kind of a maximum, this would be kind of a good middle road option. That we would have many smaller apartments, but then we would also have some bigger ones. And also because of the reason that it would have room for a washing machine, because we cannot really know that how the apartment demand will develop, our studio's lasting trend. Thank you, Antti and Emil.
tämän firman voitti. Tosiaan käytännössä kaikki muut meidän asunnot Otaniemessä on...
I think practically all of the other apartments or studios in Otaniemi are bigger than this. So 21.5.
Määrä, tai itse asiassa uusia pieniä asuntoja meille.
Would be because we don't have new smaller apartments.
Haluan painottaa sitä, että niitä isompia
So I'd like to emphasize that there are many bigger apartments available already. Thank you.
Puttunen Voltti.
Puttunen.
Tässä, jos katsoo tätä esitysmateriaalia, niin täällä kanssa mainitaan,
If you look at the presentation material, we can see that
18%, mikä eroaisi tästä ja niiden
about 18% apartments that have 35 square meters. So it would mean that we could also have smaller apartments there. So maybe then I don't think that the 50-50 solution between these two options doesn't achieve the intended results. And as was mentioned, we already have spacious studios already. So maybe now it would be better to just guarantee an apartment for as many people as possible. Thank you. And then there in the middle.
Oilin Pieti Kylterirengas. Ja no, vaikka on totta, että tämä tarjoaa vähän...
Even if it's true that the smaller size allows for more apartments, but we cannot know what students in 2050 will need from their apartments, and what's difficult to change is the size of the apartment. So I think that would be much more safer for the future, and would also give possibilities if, for example, someone wants a twin bed, even if they live alone. It's not possible in the smaller one. There is no space for a twin bed. So the apartment would be much more livable and would be better in line with our strategy of offering the best student life possible. If you can fit something else than just a narrow bed and a table in your apartment.
Kiitos, herra puheenjohtaja.
Thank you, Filman. I'd like to note the previous comments that we cannot know how the trends develop, but we can know that apartments will be needed. And we'll also get the best student's life for our members by offering them apartments in general on campus. And when we look at this blueprint, it says 120 centimeter bed, not a 90 centimeter bed, as you mentioned. So there is space for a larger bed as well. And I think the main target group is for people who live alone. So if you have an apartment with 21.5 square meters, we'll get more apartments and it will have space for a wider bed as well. So really we need to think that, well, I want to live in a bigger apartment, so we need to have bigger apartments. We cannot think in that way. Thank you.
You may also ask for the floor. We may move to maybe vote soon. Sampo, please. As a general comment, in this kind of a 50-50 model, the total amount of flats would go down about 75. AYYE has about 3,000 flats after Miestentie has been completed. So it's about 50 is the lynch point here. Maybe you start thinking about shared apartments. You can get lots of people per square meter there in a shared apartment. Pollari, please. Pollari schisma. Maybe kind of a meta on the nature of the vote, that people will hand out blue and red votes. I don't believe that AYY's board will actually just decide like, okay, this is what it's going to be, 800 apartments, go. But rather, we have a detail level discussion about something that's really preliminary. Will it be our priority to offer quality or quantity? Thank you, Visa.
Kiitos Matson Vihreämpi Aalto, niin ihan mielenkiintoista tuli
Matson Vihreämpi Aalto. I checked at Domo's web pages. 25 square meters isn't large, not by a long shot. The 46 is a bit closer to the truth. So it's saying that 25 is quite average. I say that it's pretty okay. Thank you, Fanny. Any other requests for the floor? No other requests, so closing the floor and the discussions, moving to vote, reminding people that this is a preliminary vote. We are not just committing to X, Y, nor Z. Options are there on the screen. So what kind of variation does the representative council hope for between apartment sizes? Blue is large apartments, as many as possible. Red is as many small apartments as possible, and white is equal shares, 50-50 in terms of compromise. Do we have any questions on what we are voting on and how? This is a preliminary vote. Reiterating, can't reiterate this enough. So that Huttunen and Ihalainen, if you could come up front in preparation to the vote. Please take your own voting slips, since you are entitled to vote. Or at least the voting slip you intend to use. Everybody ready? Wonderful. All slips up now. Looks pretty blue. Clearly, looking very blue. We don't need a kind of a close call count. You may lower your voting slips. Thank you. So yes, we may then move to close item 8, move on to item 9. So item 9, appointment of a delegation to represent AYYE at the General Assembly of the National Union of University Students in Finland, SUL. And the proposal will be presented Laura Luoto as her swan song. Before I unleash you, Laura, I'll remind you that the SUL regulation states that once we have the board's template, you can't make changes to the template. You may either approve it or return it to preparation. Give me the microphone. Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. I assume you can hear me, even the interpreters. I see a thumbs up. So the topic is the SUL delegation. Let's go right to the point. Starting with the delegation application process. Thank you. What am I pointing at? How do I point? How do I point? Can use the arrow key to change slides. Yeah, SIL regulation as a reminder, item 2, which is about the choice of delegation, so that the representative council appoints the SUL delegation, and the delegation will represent all Aalto members at the General Assembly. The board will make a template suggestion after hearing from the groups, and the delegation shall be comprised of the members who will use AYY's voice and the General Assembly. And for this delegation, the board will have a open application period. Next slide follows up on quotes from the regulation that the delegation slots are divided so that 5 members and 5 stand-ins are appointed by the board according to their whims, and the remainder of the spots, the number of spots differentiates each year. So the representative council groups may state based on the results of the compositions and in relation to this previous phrase in the Finnish phrase means that the places of the delegations will be divvied up by the sizes of the representative council and delegation groups. As it's forming in the delegation, the board will take into account the statements by the groups, their expertise, their efficiency, and their representativeness. Based on the template must be ready 2 weeks prior. Let's talk about this year's delegation applications. We had the opening period from the 18th of August to the 8th of September. We have increased the number of spots based on that AYY's member amounts have grown. We have 16 and 16 stand-ins, so a grand total of 32 individuals. So 11 is actually the amount of slots the members can affect. We collected statements at the pretty much the same time as with the delegation application process was ongoing. During the applications process, we had 31 applications. Jämärä did not actually fulfill all of their spots. And from Aalto's coalition, we had more applicants than we actually had for the group. We also had a few late applications. The option to give statements was undertaken by 4 groups. Next up, we will look at the division of spots. So we are talking about the 11 slots that are left over after the board has delegated their 5 choices. So here we have counted so that all groups spots look at how much group or ring has, how many spots do they have, and then it's been checked that in relation that their representativeness, how many of the 11 can they claim? We are looking at 16 slots and 16 deputy member slots. Then going forward, and first off, Greener Aalto has stated that they are wondering that Kultarirengas has received 3+3 when they have 11 slots in the representative council, and Greener Aalto has 2+2 when they have 10 slots, so quite a small difference, but a large difference in practical. And the Aalto coalition got 1+1. And they will wish Vihreämpi Aalto to gain 3+3. And Luova has commented that the 5 plus 5, and 11 plus 11 is okay to luova. And it works. Voga has stated that the delegation slots are okay. They presented Johan Lindell as a member and no stand-in that would, no deputy that would have, speak Swedish as their first language, but they wished that they could find one amongst the delegates. And there is indeed a second individual who does speak Swedish. Then continuing on the statements that Kyltäri-Rengas left, a very clear and detailed comment. Thank you for your clear and detailed comment. So it has stated directly that what applicants are wanted as original members and what as deputy members. Also, the experience of the applicants has been stated. Going straight up to the delegation proposal. And this year, this looks different from earlier years because we have a kind of an exciting moment with SYL, which is Teekkari's 150 party, and participation for this party was asked when the applications were tallied. Are you going to participate was the original question. It's not seen as a hindrance, but the fact that we have so many delegates participating in Teekkari Perinnejuhla, Teekkari Traditions Party, it actually brought kind of a new dimension to forming the delegation, and at that stage we had to maybe break the idea that the board can only allocate 5 spots and 11 is left out. But based on this presentation, the idea was that let's try and ensure that AYY's all voices and votes will be used for the entirety of the General Assembly. And this can't be reiterated too much, how important this is, especially this year when we have 2 applicants there. And we have what, 11 plus 2. 11 board applicants and then 3 for chairperson. So AYY needs all of AYY's votes for the entirety of the General Assembly. And here you can see that the blue marks are the people who will be leaving for the Teekkari Perinnejuhla Teekkari Traditions Party. I hope that I'm not sure that these people might overlap a bit. They will overlap the General Assembly and the party, but we will aim to ensure that if they overlap, that we will ensure and contain all our required votes. It is possible that the General Assembly will end in a timely fashion and we can actually do the votes and get all our applicants nicely there, and people can attend the Teekkari Traditions Party. But blue are the people who will be leaving the GA at some point to attend the party. And this is something that I have been trying to take into account so that the 2 blue people will not be a pair. And in the last column, we have the fact that will the vote be retained throughout the entirety of the General Assembly. And now you can see that with the current proposals, we have 14 out of 16 votes. We are missing 2 deputy or stand-in members that would hopefully not leave the GA. Also state that you may put the next slide. That Otherwise, SYL regulation requires that the board will, in its proposal, take into account the delegation's expertise. And this expertise has been strengthened usually so that we have AYY's experts on advocacy in the delegation, and they may quite quickly comment mid-assembly and evaluate if they are according to our values. Also, our delegation formation must be taken into account other factors like impressiveness, which is, of course, in the fact that we will have our votes full, so it'll be effective. We have also the time aspect that we will actually have both individuals that may be doing their second, third, or fourth General Assembly, that they have experience on how the GA will work. And also we can have new people who will be taught and they can kind of see 3 to 4 General Assembly. So continuity is key. Representativeness we have seen such as we have seen that we have all the schools in Aalto represented equally in the delegation. This is not complete. This is not complete in this ski, and some other representations are very high. But all in all 5 schools are represented. Some points. One applicant has not been able to be taken into the proposal because they have not told anything about their motivations in being present in the delegation. This because delegation work requires lots of hours, requires lots of dedication, that I have not seen that I could accept this applicant. Also a note that when the application process for the delegation has closed, and I had made this proposal that you see before you, but we still had a few applicants, 2 applications, late applications. I had not received any prior notice before their application, so I could not take those 2 applications into account, regrettably, in our proposal, and the board decided to actually decide on the delegation at that stage when we noticed that there were a couple of late applicants. We have 2 applicants that are missing, and the board has, I think, every year, this is the 3rd time kind of presenting these delegations, the board has fulfilled the delegation later throughout the fall. Somebody might not make it, or that might be empty spots. It is possible that these late applicants will be accepted as fulfillments to the delegation, but this is not something that is actually written on the regulation anywhere. Then you may actually get to the thick of it and start the discussions on the subject. Thank you. Opening discussions. And let's do so that to start with, if we have any irregularities or something that is unclear, you may ask those questions first, and then we may move to the free discussion. Do you have any questions? Looks like no questions. Of course, you may ask questions later as well. All kinds of requests for the floor may be undertaken. And should be. Looks very clear. No requests for the floor. So I will close the discussion and move to decide. The motion was that the representative council decided to appoint a delegation to represent AYYE at the General Assembly of the National Union of University Students in Finland in accordance with Appendix 9, closing item 9, moving on to item 10, which is the preliminary debate on briefing of the General Assembly delegation of the National Union of University Students in Finland. Teemu will be presenting this item. I will continue with this speaker yet as a instruction to Timo. So, when Laura will be remove herself from our presence, even though she's sitting right there, practical issues of the SYL delegation actually fell to me. So this is why I am here for the first time. I am the educational policy expert, actually advocacy expert. But let's get to the thick of things. The slides that are actually presented to the group chairs on Monday, we looked at what kind of grounds do we need. For you, the essential is that the reason is that why we are here, because the regulation states that the RepCo must have a preliminary discussion where you can give kind of a actual instructions. We weren't actually told that we have actually had more delegates than on Monday. So 2 plus 11 is now 5 plus 11. There's actually two things here. We have the discussions or negotiations idea you may vote on, and the other one, so that the SYL General Assembly and partially we've had this kind of a negotiation system. It hasn't been something that's facilitated by the union. It has been always given some rooms for these groups. Different kinds of groups have given different kinds of votes or their votes to the coalitions, which might be whatever kinds of coalition. Could be based on majors, political parties. You may think of everything, but these are kind of the main groups given to delegates to negotiate, and they will negotiate throughout the night. And then white smoke comes out, and suddenly we have a pope, as it were. And next day, when everybody is voting, they will know what to vote. There was kind of its own drama, why people wanted to get rid of it. So we haven't done it for a few years on policy per the student unions. But I can't say that it's not being done at all because we don't know. For example, last year, we don't know if maybe people have shifted their opinions. That is always their right. Next year, there were negotiations, even though official negotiations didn't take place. When the negotiations had its good points and bad points, we have gone to the current system based on that. Going to the actual details, the delegation will meet 3 times before the GA. And in this meeting, they will be preparing proposals for change, policies, thinking of what the delegation and AYYE want to take a stance on. So these rounds might have reached you, probably have reached you, because I have started them and our statement has been made. So you've had a few days to look at it. The 26th, we will have the original, actual, official material that will be available for the representative council. So you may think on what kind of issues you want to make policies on. The policies is that if AYY's policy paper will actually be against it, AYYE will not make this kind of policy. It has to be in line with our values. Big issues in the plan next year. We have the parliamentary elections. We have the next year's levels have already been published. The policy paper will not be proposed for change, which means that so it's kind of a very light General Assembly. We just have the large thing up for grabs. Somebody might actually want some proposals for change. Regulation changes are abound. The number of stand-in or deputy members and the size of the General Assembly in the future. Syl's central office wants to actually cut down on the size of the meeting. But all in all, the delegation that has been just appointed has lots of AYY's decision-making power. We've usually used it very efficiently. I hope that as delegates, you will be active in meetings, first of which will be on Monday. You have email messages waiting for me when we get back from the podium. Here's my short introduction. Now you may give advice to the delegates. If we are negotiating, then definitely AYY should negotiate. Thank you. Other requests for the floor? We have nice policy paper enough that we don't actually need to give any other instructions, right? Let's do so. That I will close discussions and move to decide the motion that the Representative Council decided to the Representative Council decided to record the preliminary debate on briefing the delegation participating in the Seoul General Assembly, closing item 10, moving on to item 11, amendments to technical student meeting regulations. The technical student meeting introduced amendments to the technical student meeting regulations. Section 16 of the technical student meeting regulation states that amendments to this regulation may be decided by a majority of at least 2/3 of the votes of the member representatives present at the technical student meeting. An amendment shall be entered into force when approved by AYY's representative council. Thank you. So moving onwards.
Käydään nopeasti vielä kertauksena läpi, että mikä tämä teekkarikokous on. Eli teekkarikokous on Aalto-yliopiston
So what is this meeting?
So it decides on the teekkari culture and all guilds and TF and prosessiteekkarit are within the scope of the teekkarikokous meeting. So everyone who takes in new technical students. Each of these associations has possibility to have 2 seats as representatives in the meetings. And the decisions enter into force after being approved by the AYY board. And here is an excerpt from the constitution.
Ja näissä ohjesäännöissä on tietysti myös sen ohjesäännön muuttamisesta kohta. Voit laittaa eteenpäin.
And it also states in section 16 how to amend the regulation. So amendments to the regulation may be decided by a majority of at least 2/3 of the votes of the member representatives present at the technical student meeting. An amendment shall enter into force when approved by AYY's representative council. And in the technical student meeting 2021, amendment was proposed, and in order for it to enter into force, the representative council must approve of it. So the proposed change will be in section 3. In chapter 3, section 9, the technical student meeting shall meet when necessary, that we will change it to the technical student meeting shall meet at least twice a year. The justification for this is that we want to guarantee the continuity of the technical student meeting. Thank you. Opening discussion. Any questions or other comments? Filman.
Kiitos herra puheenjohtaja Filman Voltti. Mielestäni teekkarikokouksen pitäisi olla täysin itsenäinen eikä AYsta riippuvainen
Thank you. I think the technical student meeting should be a completely independent body and not dependent on AYYE. Thank you. Any other requests for floor? Apparently no, so closing discussion. And Terveys Council decided to approve the amendments to the technical student meeting regulation in accordance with Appendix 11. Closing item 11, moving to item 12, other business. Does anyone have any other business? Yes.
Edellisessä kokouksessa, jos käsiteltiin asumisen
The previous meeting talked about changes to the housing regulations.
osuvia kommentteja, erityisesti
Very good comments back then, especially about the students in Mikkeli.
Mä en pysty niihin kysymyksiin vastaamaan tyydyttävästi, joten
I can't answer your questions in a satisfactory manner because I think it's a policy issue.
Me ollaan siinä tilanteessa, että meidän ohjesääntö on ollut jo
But
lähetekeskustelussa ja
these guidelines and regulations were under preliminary debate, and I'm not the right person to make proposal of a change. Actually, I cannot even do it according to the regulations. So I make now a request, as I've done before, that there will be a proposal for change regarding this issue that we can vote on. And thank you for people in the back row for the excellent questions. And apologies for this lacking answer. And another thing.
Antti on tänään saanut D:n paperit, niin voitais pientä kättä.
Antti graduated today, got the actual papers. So he's now a certified engineer. Thank you. Any other request for floor? Any other business? Allu, do you have something?
No joo, eli tänään on siis jatkot.
Yes, today we will have an after party
Edarin piikkiin. Siellä on
at the central office.
jotain hyvin pientä.
So we have some snacks and something to drink as well. And Otto Usvärvi, actually the president of the board, is now preparing the space for you, so we can move there right after the meeting. Thank you. It seems quite restless here since it's already 7:30, so we can move on to item 13, closing of the meeting. It's now 7:35 p.m., so closing the meeting.
Ailin Pieti, tulko käymään edessä?